Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to speak with you about meeting our own dependency needs. So dependency needs really relates to childhood. So we're going back to a time of innocence, vulnerability, helplessness, absolute dependency on others for our survival. Now that's a process we all go through as a baby, as a newborn. I mean, think of it, a baby can't even roll over on their own initially. So our survival depends on others to care for us. Our dependency needs must be met by someone else to an adequate level, or else we die. End of story. And sometimes, tragically, babies are neglected and they do die. And they don't survive for very long. And so our dependency stage of development is absolutely overwhelming. And if we're left alone, if we're not being responded to, if there isn't that consistent response and touch, it's terrifying. I mean, there's a method of parenting called the continuum method, which is really advocating constant touch for the first couple of years. So the baby is held, the baby is carried, the baby is slung on the back. The baby always has contact and co-sleeping arrangement with parents. You know, none of this sort of Anglo, the children are off in the nursery being cared for by someone else than the parents. None of that sort of traumatizing isolation. The opposite of that. You've got a baby in the womb and then a baby's born and you continue that contact for the child in those early stages. Now, rather than creating a dependency, that actually just meets those needs in a beautiful, rich way that allows that healthy independence to form. If we farm off a child, leave a child, all that controlled crying nonsense, if we let a kid be apart for too long, it's actually traumatizing. They say that a minute of waiting per year of age is about what we can handle before it starts to get stressful. So if you leave a 1-year-old waiting for 5 minutes, well, they're stressed. And if it's 10 minutes, they're really stressed. If it's an hour, 2 hours, which often happens, well, you've got a bloody traumatized human being then. And that jamming up, that breaking of trust, that isolation, that overwhelm, all the ramifications of that kind of neglect trauma. That's what we're talking about here. So it's the continuum method is really the opposite of that, saying we don't leave the child stressed. We're there when we need them. They're never too far away. We're never too far from them. If we're going somewhere, we carry them. Lots of skin-on-skin contact. And when children are given that sort of parenting, there is a beautiful security that develops. I see this down the road with some wonderful neighbours of ours, and they've got very happy, secure children because they were raised in that kind of way. And then naturally, as they get older, they're running around, they're more independent. They're the ones pushing the parent away because they want to get out and explore. But then the parent's safe harbour there to come back to as required. That makes a lot of sense. So where does that leave you? How are your dependency needs met or not met when you were little? How was your stress level when you were a child? One of my therapists said many years ago that as a child, abandonment is our worst fear. Abandonment is our worst fear. It makes sense. Negative attention is better than that. But to be abandoned, to be rejected, to be left alone, that's the worst fear, the most stressful thing for obvious reasons. It comes back to that survival issue. And so, given our imperfect world, this messy, confused planet that we've incarnated on, and as a famous psychologist once said, every family is dysfunctional. Every family is a bit dysfunctional in some way or another. There's no perfect family necessarily. But in terms of dysfunction, in terms of dependency needs, how available, how present, how consistent and reliable was the connection that you experienced when you were little. Were you seen? Were you heard? Were you responded to? Or were you left crying for long stretches of time? How well were your needs met in those early stages? And so we're talking about dependency, we're talking about attachment, we're talking about all the ramifications of that. Now, the good news about it is that we don't stay in that state. However we grow and develop, however solid or shaky our foundations might be, we do get through to adulthood in one shape or another. We kind of struggle through, we stagger through into adulthood. And so we get to an age where we do have resources. We do have qualities and strengths and a certain amount of wisdom and development. The intellect develops, our physicality develops. We get to a point in whatever shape where we grow beyond those child dependency needs. And we become old enough to become a parent ourselves. I mean, if it's the Middle Ages, we're probably 16, 17, 18, and we're already married, and not married necessarily in those days, but starting a family. So the beauty of this is when we get to adulthood, we do have what the inner child needs. Even on a bad day, we've got these superpowers that we can share with our inner child. Now, what usually happens is we're locked up, jammed up in the difficulties of childhood in terms of, where there's been gaps in our needs being met, where there's insecurity in our attachment. And so that plays out in adulthood. We're stuck in this cycle. As we've talked about before, with trauma, we do get stuck at a certain time, a certain age. And when we're triggered, we regress back to that age. So we might have a very stressed infant inside us. And so we might venture out into the world, and as the adult, we want these things, and we want to create these things, we're looking for these things. But we might have a very young inner child who's still stuck in his or her dependency needs. So that child is still stuck in that state of needing, longing, craving, and huge amounts of stress and fear around this. And so as an adult, this translates as neediness. This comes across as a clinginess or a dependency or an excessive, I need you, I can't live without you, you complete me, I need you. It's this, essentially, it's a regressed infantile state. And we're bringing that into our relationships. Often it gets called romance or love. That's what falling in love is. But if we look at the psychology of it, falling in love is really a regression back to an infantile state, not the healthiest foundation for a good, mature adult relationship. So we need to get out of this pattern of looking externally for others to meet our dependency needs. We need to break that cycle of chasing, looking for the one, looking for that magical one who's going to fill all those needs and magically everything's going to be healed. Never going to happen because we're not a child anymore. If we were still a child, we'd be trying to improve the parenting, wouldn't we, to meet those needs directly. But as an adult, that cannot happen. There is no one out there who can meet those needs for us externally. They might lavish us with loving attention and affection, and that feels good in the moment, but as soon as it stops, it's like a dog, they'll kind of be at you to keep scratching them. This dog I met yesterday is like, it's pawing at me as soon as I stopped, rubbing its tummy. And so, in a sense, that inner child will be the same. As soon as that attention stops, we're upset, we're angry, we're feeling neglected, we're feeling our fear, our unmet needs again. It's never enough. No one can do that for us. And so, one thing is questioning those kind of romantic beliefs we might have about someone doing that job for us. And remember, we transfer those needs of parents or caregivers onto partners, onto bosses, onto authority figures, onto leaders, political or otherwise. We transfer it even onto the divinity, our concept of God. Often what we're doing is transferring those needs onto others. Oh, it's their job to look after us. You know, it's the government's job to look after me, or, you know, that teacher or that partner, it's their job. No, it's not. It's not their job. It's our job to become good parents to ourselves. And this is the beauty of therapy, is where we can reparent ourselves. It's as simple as turning all those adult resources that we've got, even on a bad day, they're wonderful powers of attention, love, maturity, and to direct them inward, to drop in, connect to the inner child, to find those parts of us stuck in that need and to meet those needs in-house. You know, think of it as the self-sourcing pudding. We need to be able to invert that loving attention, that empathic witnessing, to see, hear, feel, connect with those parts of us that are stuck, layer by layer. Inner child's a very efficient way to get to that. It's very effective. And hypnotherapy is really just dropping in. It's a shift in brainwave state, so we're accessing those parts of us that lie on a different brainwave frequency. So hope that makes sense. Hope you find that really interesting, and I hope that encourages you to explore the inner work more. So however you find that, whether it's in person with a therapist, a lot of people do inner child work. There's stacks of stuff out on YouTube. I've got a lot of guided practices. There's an online course called The Power of Mind that's on my website, which teaches you how to do self-hypnosis, and inner child connection is one of the steps in that online course. It's critical, and it has to happen that way. But when we do it, we notice shifts. We notice an easing of the anxieties, the fears, those needs that were unmet. Well, we can fill them completely. And as I often say to people when we're doing this process work, I'm here for you now. I'm going to give you all the love and attention you ever needed to get you to the point where you feel like you had the best childhood a kid ever had. That's the goal. That's the intention. And with this inner work, it's absolutely possible to shift our subconscious patterning to that level. Hope you find that interesting. Absolutely here for you as you need. Sing out with any questions, and I'll see you next time. God bless.